Well, and the other thing that drives the aviation business is, of course, the military putting pressure on things. And this is I think this might be the next article on the list. I'm not sure.
Go for it.
But,
Good segue.
So all last week, the Air Force held this virtual kickoff of Agility Prime, is what they're calling this effort to bring air taxis to market. And it's kind of everything we've been talking about for the past 5 to 10 minutes is wrapped up in this. It's the military stepping in and saying, we really care about what happens here. This space, the U.S. needs to have a presence here. It's the military saying, we screwed up on small UAS and we lost the entire supply chain to China. And now I think the Will Roper quote, Will Roper's the chief acquisition guy for the Air Force. He said something like, the Department of Defense has to sign off on every use of a DJI drone, which is true. And so how do we avoid this happening with air taxis in the future? Because they can see all sorts. It's pretty obvious that there's military use for electric aircraft. It's a pretty clear dual use technology. And of course, now we live in an age where I think the stat is, 75, 80% of R&D comes out of the commercial sector, not the military sector, unlike, 30, 40 years ago. So this is the military looking at this and saying, okay, not only are we going to put the resources in to try to make sure that, this technology is developed because it's beneficial for the military, but we also think that there is a military necessity to having a functioning and profitable commercial industry behind this. And so they're setting the bar for success at commercial success, not something that they can procure, which I think is very smart. And the question is, what impact will that have on everything we've been talking about? Will that place pressure on the FAA? Hopefully, I think. But also, the military is trying to use their resources, their wind tunnels, their test ranges, and their certification and their ability to say, go fly missions for us, or even fly them over stadiums to get, public approval, to give all of that data to the FAA to help them move their process forward as well. So, question for you guys. Is this a good thing? What impact will this have? Will it be significant, or is this not something that's really going to impact the speed at which the FAA moves?
Wow, go ahead.
No, that's tough. I'm going to let you take it. But
okay, thank you.
I'm going to formulate more thoughts.
I'm seeing a strategy here. You're dodging the not kidding.
I like it. Well, I look at it like, okay, DoD wants to come in. They've got the R&D money. They've got the R&D bank that they can do that. And not all entities, not all commercial entities are going to want to go into a DoD contract with DoD as the end client. But if DoD is willing to say, okay, you develop this for us, we'll give you $3 million, $20 million, $400 million, whatever, to you to develop this for us. And oh, by the way, this could also be a commercial market for you. I see that as huge for the industry because that just does not exist right now. You've just got people trying to get money from investors and blah blah blah, and investors are shying away from the UAS market right now because of so much what's going on. Everybody's consolidating and stuff like that. So the fact that we've got the DoD willing to help the commercial market, the civilian commercial market, I think is a huge thing. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so. I'll actually be more controversial. So I think it's a double-edged sword in a couple ways. I think there's a tendency in America to let the free market run things, right? Because we get results like the iPhone out of that. But we also got, NAFTA out of that. We also got what essentially was the small UAS supply chain being entirely Chinese, and whether or not you think that's a good thing, really kind of depends on which side of the aisle you fall on. But when you look at military spending and investment in things, I think people look back at the history 50 years ago and say, well, they helped invent the internet. Well, the people at MIT and elsewhere helped invent the internet with DARPA money. But was their goal to serve a military end? And eventually the technologies that were built and the markets that we built in the 70s, 80s, 90s up till today started producing superior products because market forces were developing them rather than single spec sheets from a single purchaser, as I think the government is referred to in the military kind of base of vendors. And So it's interesting to see them kind of give up on that single buyer model a little bit with this kind of hedged model. The SAR program was, I think, the genesis of that. And Auterion and PX4's ecosystem was the first open source project the military ever backed. Open source, thinking about that, that's as scary and open as you can get for the military, who likes to have asymmetrical information control. Right? They want to have the best eggs in their basket, and they'll give the rest to the market to help develop. So I think, there has to be willpower. But if you're going to spend through the military to hope to generate an infrastructure here, you're going to end up having to spend more. At some point, you also have to make up for time, because the model that you're describing actually was the Chinese model for DJI and Yahweh.
Right.
In those markets, they created a pool of kind of market players, and they picked the best one, and then they funded it, and they said, "You're, our champion for this technology."
So,
I think that's what the military is trying to do here, but we still also have to spend more because of lost time.
I think they're trying to take into account everything you're saying and structure their approach to this in a way that minimizes the downsides as much as possible. So they're not picking a single winner. They're not down selecting to a certain number of, and then selecting the best one at the end, or it's not that type of a competition. They're willing to buy multiple systems. They're saying up front, we're not going to buy a ton of these. The real market for this is commercial. Yes, we see uses for these air taxis, electric, whatever you want to call them. We see uses. We're going to buy, I think they've said, at least 30, and I'm sure for cargo carrying, they'll probably buy far more than that because they're far cheaper than helicopters. But the main market really is commercial. We're not going to put any defense-specific, defense-unique requirements on these. So they're trying to build it in a way, to structure this in a way. And by the way, they're also not pumping a ton of money in, because the money's already there for UAM for the most part. I mean, there's been billions of dollars of investment already. Joby Aviation has raised $720 million, 493 of which came from Toyota. Boeing and Kitty Hawk have put probably $200 million combined into their joint venture Whisk, and Kitty Hawk, of course, is funded by Larry Page, and he funds another company in the UAM space as well. You've got trying to think of the others on the European side. Lilium and Volocopter have both raised over 100 million. I think Lilium closed another round for 270 million. Anyways, the point is the money is there from private venture capitalists who see opportunities here. The problem is more, the resources to get these things certified quickly, right? Having the test ranges, getting the flight hours under their belts, and getting the data for the FAA, that sort of thing. And then B, the amount of time and the amount of risk involved between now and return on investment. This is it's a very weird market for traditional investors. Venture capitalists are not used to waiting 7 to 10 years or longer for returns. They don't like to deal with hardware. They don't like to deal with capital intensive industries, and they don't like to deal with regulatory heavy industries.
And in fact, those pressures that they've been creating caused all the problems we had with early UAS, small UAS startups.
Well, you've got a great quote in your article from I think it was, Roper. It popped out when I read it. I wasn't even thinking about we were going to talk about this, but it says every hour we log will build confidence in investors, in companies, and in regulators. I mean, that sums up what's going on with the DoD stuff right now.
Yeah. So that they're trying to do that. They're trying not to pump in money and determine a winner or anything like that. They're trying to say as many people as are able to bring an aircraft, get a full-size prototype off the ground and start flying it. We want to give them the resources to support the difficult path between flying prototype and certified, ready for production model. That's the point where they want to try to support, rather than pick a winner or anything like that. So
reducing
really
friction.
Reducing friction, and I mean, what they keep saying is de-risking the industry. So, the last couple of minutes is me all pushing their sort of just regurgitating their point of view. So,
which side are you on?
Yeah, right. but I mean, so they're trying to present it as, we're doing everything we can to not determine winners in this space, so on and so forth. Certainly, the military has a lot of resources to offer in terms of flight hours and
facilities,
testing and stuff.
Testing, yeah.